This is a Peter Wick car.
Is it like early 1940s?
1923.
Would these have come up powered in real use?
Yeah. Like if you stand out there, I'll close the door. Sure.
Yeah, my son, they made it
You playing Tim for it?
Hang on, Doc.
Who was it little liver pills? Where's little liver pills? After they in the middle with the one conductor in the middle here. Yes, he brings them that door. Yeah, when they took out the Rachel. Oh! Herb, you're on? You got me on?
Yeah, very sharp.
leather seats. These folks out here, they have the air with slack seats. I hope they hate warm, well, actually they came later. Because right here was the conductor station.
they're never going off. They never paid.
Well, there might be some of those around.
Stop again, so they never, the only place they ever got to make any speed was on the Lakeshore Road late at night. And they could go on the streets way more, even the. They go more than the speed limit. Oh, yeah. And the one on Lakeshore Road, we used to try to race with our cars late at night at the stoplight and beat the speed car.
My uncle had a model, the rules of the Model T, the TTC track. He used to put it on the track, take his hands off the wheel.
other one is just 2 axles, so they're farther apart than they are on the. This one has 2 trucks, two axle trucks.
Wheelbase of the truck is shorter.
Yeah.
Much shorter.
Yeah.
Who wants another history lesson?
Go for it.
Go for it? Okay. This car was built in Ottawa in 1963. And it was part of a contract that originally went to Canadian Car and Foundry in Montreal. But unlike the present-day Bombardier, CC&F realized they couldn't build all the cars by the required deadline. So they contracted out some of the cars to the Ottawa Car Company and some of the cars to the Preston Car Company. And as a result, all of the cars were delivered ahead of schedule. As I mentioned, this one was an Ottawa build. Did a full 40 years of service with the TTC from 23 to 1963. And this was the last, this one we're riding now was the last Peter Witt design, small Peter Witt design to come out of revenue service with the TTC. So that's one of the reasons we wanted this particular car, because it was the last to come out of regular revenue service. Now the TTC still has one of these. They've recently refurbished it, done a beautiful job, and it comes out for the Easter Parade and various charters and special events. Well, this thing went back into service for a little while, for a dozen years, after it was officially retired. There was a group called Beltline Tours, and they leased this vehicle and our big Peter Witt. And for a dozen years, you could do the tours, loops of the downtown on those cars for a regular TTC fare, and they'll give you a transfer if you get on the regular system at that point. And then when the popularity of that started to wane, the cars came back here to the museum. This one was totally rebuilt here at the museum in the year 2000. Took a couple of years, and that was before my time as a member, but some of the other fellows tell me all the interior wood, for example, was all taken down, numbered as according to its position. Members would drive home with wood sticking out of the back of their car. You know, after dinner, go down to the basement, sand it down, make it nice, bring it back here the next weekend where it was reassembled and finished by one person. This specific car is also, it's a TV star. It's been in Murdoch Mysteries. Now, fortunately, there's nobody sitting here across from the rear doors, because that's where the character was assassinated in one evening, left through that door and was never seen again. We also have in our museum barn the big brother to this, the large Peter Witt, which carries 7 more people. It's about 5.5 feet longer. It's a little bit taller. Why big and small? Well, the smaller cars were running the secondary routes like Bay and DuPont and such. The big ones were running the major routes like Yonge Street before the subway was built, Bloor Danforth. And on Yonge Street in particular, they run as trains, meaning you'd have the one big Witt car, and it would pull a trailer of similar size. And the trailer had its own conductor and its own coal stove in the middle. They had 2-door trailers and 3-door trailers. And we have somewhere hiding in our original barn here, we have the only remaining 2-door trailer known to exist. So anyway, they ran these trailer trains up and down Yonge Street prior to 1954. And we have pictures of proof. It was like a traffic jam of these Peter Witt trailer trains because the service was every 90 seconds. So that was the impetus for getting the congestion off the surface, building that as the initial subway line, and that's when the trailers were retired, when the Yonge Street subway was completed, and they started to phase out the Peter Witts at that point. The big one that's in our collection was built in Montreal in 1921, in 1921. Again, did a full 40 years of service and was retired officially in 1961. What else?
What did the trailers look like? Did they look like a car?
They looked exactly like the regular car. They sat a little bit lower, and some of them had 3 doors, so a set in the front, the middle, and the rear, and some of them only had 2 doors. The seats were all wood slats, So the heat wasn't as good as the car that was pulling it. And I'm told back in the day that the public did not like riding in the trailers. So you'd have people packed like sardines in the lead car and fairly empty trailers in behind.
Is that because it didn't ride as nice? or
No,
why?
it wasn't as well heated.
Yeah,
The heat.
The heat, and no, you're also correct, they did not ride as well, but it was mainly the heat, or lack of it.
They did run them on King Street during rush hour. I can remember riding King and Bloor and the other were the only three lines. But on the Bloor and King was only during rush hours. Young Street was pretty well all the time. I've seen all sorts of pictures of them on Young.
So you don't have any trailers here, eh?
We do have one trailer, but it's not on display because it's not restored, it's very careful.
It's basically a shell. But I guess you really have the purpose for a trailer, expect you to keep it as a
It'd be neat
history.
to have, and if we ever have $1 million, we might rebuild it.
Is that a compressor?
All the panels.
Yeah.
Compressor for the air brakes.
Basically,
The other story I'll quickly share with you for anyone who's here for the first time. The route we're riding along tonight was a railway. It was called the Toronto Suburban Railway. And it was an interurban line that ran from the junction area of Toronto, Keelan St. Clair, all the way out to Guelph. 100 stops in 2 hours. And as my colleague Harold mentioned, the replica shelter Meadowvale was one of the stops on that Toronto Suburban line. And that ran from, Harold, am I right? It ran until 1931. Yeah. 1917 to 31. In his latter years, it came under the control of Canadian National, and it ran as Canadian National Electric Railways, part of a collection of electric railways they had in Ontario and Quebec. And its other claim to fame is it never made any money. Now, the problem with this line and why it was chosen for abandonment was quite simply, when CN took this over, it was competing for passengers with their steam line that was just north of here going through Rockwood.
oh, no wonder.
So why compete against yourself? They applied for abandonment, there was a lot of contention, and it took about 3 years before they pulled out all of the infrastructure, the track, the overhead, and so on. Quite fortunate for our museum though, because in 1954, when the 8 university students founded our museum for the sole purpose of saving a wooden streetcar that the TTC was going to scrap, and again, it was the last one to come out of service, they wanted that one specifically. They're looking for a place to put it, because apparently their parents objected to it appearing in one of their driveways. So they're driving around, rural areas looking for a property, and there was a for sale sign here on 4th Line. They were able to buy the property for $200 in back taxes. The benefit was it's graded rail bed. Perfect, it's a start. So they acquired 4 acres for $200. Only one of them was of age of majority, so it was that person and the parents who signed the deed. And they managed to get donated 6 pieces of rail. Well, when the TTC heard it's 8 kids who are starting a little museum to protect one streetcar, good guys at the TTC, they gave them another car for free.
Sorry, 6 rails, that was just enough to put 1 car stationary, right?
2 cars stationary, and have 2 extra rails so they can leapfrog it. They put the 6 down, they rolled the car, then they took off the first 2 rails, moved it to the back, and that's how they got the cars down the property. And I'm told it was a real trick when they wanted to then move them laterally when they had built this barn. Of course, now you're stacking up the rails this way to get it down, and then you're changing the alignment a little bit and stacking them that way and zigzagging them back and forth. And those must have been 8 very strong, very determined gentlemen. So yeah, that was the start in 1954. And over the following 18 years, they kept adding parcels of land until they got all the way out to Guelph Line. And as they're adding parcels of land, first order scroungers, they're taking donations of rail and cable and infrastructure components from anybody and everybody who's abandoning the siding in the case of CM, Or in the case of Oshawa, when Oshawa abandoned their street railway, that's where these guys got all the overhead cable and the hangers and a lot of these triangular poles, as well as a car, an overhead service car, which you'll see in our display barn, OSR Oshawa Street Railway number 45. So the guys were good at getting stuff for free, and they and their buddies showed up. I'm told the first building on the property was Malfunction Junction, which is the outhouse just down the main line here, because the girlfriend said, if you want us to camp out for the weekend with you guys as you live out your train fantasy, we're not going in the bush, you build us a proper little shack. So that was the outhouse, that was the first building.
On the land. But it's not that good. There's a lot of rock outcroppings in that. If you look, you can see it's not what you call good. It's not A-class farmland.
No, but
It's swampy and rocky and that. But it's good bush.
yeah. I'm still drinking right away.
6 feet down. I say you have to. That's the old measurements. The joke is, for a long time.
Yeah.
So is this where they had the original cars?
Yes.
In here.
That barn was built with no electricity. All hand.
Oh, that it's a different kind of stub switch.
It's just a pole barn. Big poles.
No, it breaks the rules.
That's quite a job building that without any power.
And you heard any portable drills?
That's why I'm taking the picture.
And they knew how to use a
That's a
hammer
Chris guy, I think, wasn't it?
and a handle
Chris.
and a
His
screwdriver.
name was Chris. The guy that gave me the ride in the Jigger.
No, that's the way you have to do it.
Oh yeah, we still. I just bought my first electric drill, wire, battery operated drill screwdriver.
Yeah,
Just bought it.
yeah.
No sign, nothing.
On the left there, you see the green chain little building. That's malfunction done.
The difference between the wireless.
So it's a slug?
See the.
Well, slug that covers off the
Yeah.
But the guy walked up and said, you know what you're looking at?
It's kind of nice.
I said, why don't you
There's
have
a
a sign here?
beautiful breeze
I got
across
the
the
same question.
bottom.
I was going to bring the engine down.
Difference between a
And
wireless
they're looking, guarding this,
and a cordless router.
Yeah.
but not getting any attention because none of the sure what it is.
Read the sign,
I
Don.
was zooming in on them.
Yeah.
The wires were big.
Population 1 at a time.
Yeah, exactly. Our Connie used to have one of those.
That's a tool. You ever been to the fingers on the hill?
You should try using one of those.
Oh yeah, I know. I
At
have.
Halliburton, we used to cut the style from the seat. We each had one.
It's amazing that we can find a fireplace.
You ran out.
It's amazing you can find out for you.
Guess what your toilet paper was? Catalog.
Up the Harvard Road. Out in the north.
I was eating section. Or Simpson's catalog.
My grandfather used to beer. They lived on Cashogga Street.
Whereabouts?
Cashogga.
Oh, yeah.
They surveyed a lot of the roads. My dad was a freshwater university.
Now, the Eaton's catalog, Continental. Did you have the Eaton's catalog? Or the Simpsons, either one of the two. Very little. Very
The
little.
catalogs were better before they got the Chinese.
Yeah, they wanted to record this
More
set.
like a newspaper.
Yeah, it wasn't a coated paper, but it was still bloody rough.
This is where the tree came down. This is right in. We're just past it.
So how was the walk around here? So how was the pond there?
It leaks a little bit. You need to put a new liner in.
How wide's the widest part of this one?
I don't know. Probably down where the gift shop is. I don't know how many feet it is.
Big gallons in there.
Any of the neighbors get tired of bells?
We haven't had any complaints. Some of our neighbors are members. They're happy. They try and get along. We're not really getting a lot of complaints.
Bells aren't that loud. I always think of that. It's not like this.
This is a hell of a lot quieter than a diesel bus. A hell of a lot quieter. And we never noticed it. We lived the street corner of Howard Park Avenue. And, you know, it was like the side of the house, the sidewalk, and the road and the streetcar. And I used to think the road was huge. Go back up. It's not as wide as the third drive. In fact, your street is wider than Howard Park Avenue. And we never noticed it.
Bell Telephone's gonna put a tower right down here. You're renting the land from us now. There's no one else going to the tower on the property. No one's gonna see it back there.
It's a source of revenue for you.
Well, this is the dead area. If you get a cell phone, you're looking to find service here. You usually have to go down by the highway.
So they needed to put the service here.
Yes. Now they're renting the land, but they haven't started to put it up yet.
But it's,
Oh, every month.
yeah.
And when they do, they have to put a new hydro line, which we're going to be able to put up. So it's good for us. It's good. And everywhere else they wanted it, all the community said no, we don't want it.
Well, they are ugly, let's face it.
Well, this one's going to be painted green,
And it's in the
gonna
middle of
be
the
hidden
bush.
back down there. You're not going to see
You're
it.
not gonna notice.
Is it going to be one of the fake tree ones or just green?
Just green.
That gets
Have you seen the one from Algonquin Park?
No,
It looks like a tree.
really.
Google it when you get home. They've got branches on it and everything. It looks like a tree.
Oh,
It's the only way they could get it there.
Well, it makes sense to do it that way.
Yeah. No, what happened there? Why, what was wrong? Oh, shit! So they had to change the operating frequency in that area, or the split. The Douglas firs need to put short away from that. You wouldn't believe it. Where'd you get?
This is 1920.
Is it music?
That music, yeah. That's the original recording. Happy Days Are Here
Happy days are here
again.
again.
Yeah, Happy Days Are Here again.